Hello and welcome to the lecture of International Business Environment. In this, we will going to discuss on Block 1, Unit 1, India's Foreign Trade. Topics to be covered are the components of foreign environment, that is geographical environment, foreign environment, economical and financial environment, social cultural environment, political environment, legal environment, ecological environment. Now, as in the previous session of International Business Environment, the introduction, we discussed about that what exactly the international business is. What is environment? What exactly the international business environment is? What are the components of it? How many types of environment are there? And yes, at the same time, what are the relevancies of the environment? So in this session, we will going to discuss on all the components of the business environment, and what are those components which are very necessary to understand. Before going to the geographical, political, legal and social cultural environment, financial, economical environments of the organization, why we need to study that environment? That means we will having a review of the previous session. Yes, we basically needed to have a full-fledged understanding of that particular country. We basically need to understand all these environments to have a good glance of that particular market. What kind of a market are there? What kind of customers are there? All these study of environment is basically help the organizations somewhere to an extent, and yes, at the same time these things lead the organization towards the betterment of it, and yes, towards the growth. So we can state that it is one of the very essential thing which needs to be studied before understanding all the policies and all the factors of the international businesses. The very first component of that international business environment is a geographical environment. Geographical environment is basically discussing about countries' geographical or countries' climate, countries' topography, the natural resources and people. This environment mainly emphasized on, इस environment की जो main study होती है, that is what, that you need to understand कि एक country का surroundings और climate कैसा है, एक country की topography कैसी है. In that geographic environment or in that particular country's climate, okay, let's have a glance. Like the choices of a people, the demands of a people in concept of eating food, wearing clothes, have housing facilities, that all depends on the climate of that particular country. At the same time, in a topography, we discussed about, yes, they basically lead to the what kind of an area. It's in a hilly area, it's a plain area, it's a valley area. That all comes into the topography part. That means this is what one of the thing is very necessary to understand. For example, you tried to sell out a very warm clothes in those areas when there is no climate, winter climate. So in that case, that kind of a product is not possible to sell off there. So that comes into the understanding of geographic environment. This basically influences the nature and characteristics of a society. Yes, the liking, usage of the particular product lies on that. जो कि हमने अभी example में state किया कि if एक XYZ country के climate में winters बहुत ज़्यादा दिनों तक retain नहीं करती है, उस केस में या उस पर्टिकुलर कंट्री के अंदर आप वुलन क्लोथ्स या वार्म क्लोथ्स नहीं सेल ऑफ कर सकते, या उनकी रिक्वायरमेंट भी होगी तो वो बहुत हाई वार्म्थ क्लोथ की रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं होगी. सो दैट वाज कम्स इनटू द नेचर एंड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ दैट सोसाइटी. एंड यस, वन ऑफ द वेरी important is that it's permanent and necessary condition for the development of society, because when we talk about the development of society or the increase or the growth of a society, we consider that geographic surroundings of that particular country. That will lead to the geographic environment. Next is the foreign environment. Foreign environment is having an understanding about the foreign countries or other countries. It is what discussing about all the factors which are related to their political, their social, their economical, their tax, their legals, their technological environment. This basically leads to have the understanding about the host countries and compare what your home country is serving and how you are going to perform in the host country. Home country वो होती है जो हमारी डोमेस्टिक कंट्रीज होती हैं, होस्ट कंट्रीज वो जहां पर जाकर एक बिजनेस परफॉर्म करता है. सो फॉरेन एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर हमें होस्ट कंट्री के हर एनवायरनमेंट को स्टडी करना पड़ता है. एंड यस एट द सेम टाइम वी कंपेयर इट विद द होम कंट्री. कितनी सिमिलैरिटीज अवेलेबल हैं और कितनी डिसिमिलैरिटीज अवेलेबल हैं. आप जिस होम कंट्री के अंदर परफॉर्म कर रहे हो, आर दे कंपैटिबल विद योर होस्ट कंट्री और नॉट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर आपका प्रोडक्ट सुटेबल है इंडियन एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर, सो इन दैट केस that product may possible suitable for all the Asian countries also. It's may possibility. So in that case, Asian countries में से आपको सबसे similar और about similar environment search करना पड़ेगा to sell out your product. So that will lead to the foreign environment. That is why foreign market operations, their sensitivity of that changing, and the same time the adaptation of strategies, the different uses of strategies, all depends on that particular foreign environment. Another is economical and financial environment. Now, economical and financial environment is completely talking about the monetary flows in that particular country. If we talk about the host countries, तो एक host country में किस तरह से आपका money rotate होता है? What are all those policies they use to utilize their monies? All that, for example, in India, we use the fiscal policies and monetary policies for that. What kind of inflation rates they have? What are the recessions they have? At the same time, understanding about the GNPs, what are the investment policies they have? Well, because we have to consider that what kind of investments are there, what kind of opportunities are there for the investment. For understanding that opportunities, we need to understand the infrastructure of that particular country. What are the infrastructure? Is technological development are there? Is financial growth was there or not? How they actually utilize their accounting system? These things, and yes, at the same time, while entering into the host country, you have to judge the balance of payment also, that how they actually manage their balance of payments accounts. So that was comes into the economic and financial environment. After the economical and financial environment, the next is social cultural environment. Social cultural environment, today we discussed about the societal practices of particular country. What exactly society means them, and yes, at the same time, what kind of culture they have basically. If we talk about the cultures considered all as values, beliefs, attitude the people have, what kind of knowledge they have, art they have. Like for example, in India, the people very much gives importance to their religion aspect. So this is what comes into the cultural perspective. So cultural and social के अंदर हमें एक पूरी सोसाइटी की अंडरस्टैंडिंग लेनी होती है, that what is all about society is. एंड सोसाइटी कंसिडरेशंस किस तरह से यहाँ पर किए जाते हैं एक पर्टिकुलर कंट्री में. एंड यस, एट द सेम टाइम वो पर्टिकुलर कंट्री किस तरह से अपने वैल्यूज को, बिलीव्स को, एटीट्यूड्स को कैरी करती है, किस तरह के कस्टम्स वहां पे फॉलो किए जाते हैं, किस तरीके की इमोशनल अंडरस्टैंडिंग्स वहां पे कैरी की जाती हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, इंडिया हैव अ वेरी इमोशनल एंड वेरी गुड इमोशनल फैक्टर्स. एट द सेम टाइम दे वर गुड इन द rich in the cultural, in the art form. So whosoever company wants to enter in the India, they need to understand what are the societal and cultural practices in it. And yes, at the same time, what are the business customs they were going to perform, what are the technological and social groups they were going to be considered. So that was comes into the social and cultural environment. If we required to state them in a very layman language, it is just to having an understanding about the society and the culture of that particular society. Now next is talking about the political environment. Political environment is simply discussed about analyzing the factors of a government. That means what kind of government was ruling in that particular country, what are the methodologies they have, what all ideas, ideologies they have. At the same time, what overall political system a country have, what kind of political stability a country have, what kind of political risk a country have. Suppose for example, a company don't have a good political stability, or they have a huge political risk. So in that case, business always thinks twice to enter in that particular country. So अगर political system कॉन्सेप्ट है या प्रॉपर मैनेज नहीं है, या फिर उस एक पर्टिकुलर कंट्री के अंदर जो पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजीज हैं वो अगर मैच नहीं करती हैं, सो इन दैट टर्म्स एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए उस पर्टिकुलर एनवायरनमेंट में एंटर होना बहुत रिस्की होता है. बट येस, that is why it is important to understand the political environment, yani ki the understanding the current governing government of that particular country. Political environment is very much related to the legal environment. When in a political environment, we discussed about the governing methodologies and ideologies of that particular country. In legal environment, we discussed about all the legal factors, all the regulations and rules that particular country have. Like if you want to start up a business, so with what policies you are going to start. If you were setting the factory in India, so you have to follow the Factory Act. So that is what legal environment, what kind of all the legal formalities you have required. You need a license for that, you have a permit for that. So that's all formalities was required. So that's all come into the legal environment. That is why legal environment is discussing about every business firm operate within the jurisdiction of the legal system. At the same time, they considered all the business operations, all the laws which affects the environment of the particular country. Now, after having a discussions on the legal environment, we will going to have a discussion on ecological environment. Now, ecological environment is discussing about the relationship between the living things in that particular country. If we talk about living things, it is what all plants, animals, people of that particular country. Ecological environment is not only limited to the only environment of that country, that what kind of an environment, what kind of an climates they have. No, it's not limited to that. It's basically discussing about all the relationships between the plants, animals and people. How much a country is rich with its resources, how much is countries rich with their manpower, that's all going to be having an understanding of ecological environment. So all these relationships with that people, with that plants, with that animal, this thing was lead to have the understanding about the resources also, considering because in ecological environment, country needs to understand mainly on the resources part. That is, what kind of water, land, forest, grassland, minerals, biological species, tourism areas they have. That means how much a country is rich with their all resources. That comes into the ecological environment. Isliye, ecological environment is very much required to be considered because अगर आप एक कंट्री के अंदर एंटर कर रहे हो, so in that case it is very necessary to understand कि किस तरह से वहाँ पर resources available होंगे and किस तरह से आप वहाँ पर resources को utilize कर सकते हो. That is why ecological environment is enhancing ecological protections and constructing a very key area in that particular business. एक business में ecological environment को nowadays especially gives a huge importance because it is considering all your environments and all your balancing. That is why now the concepts of business is rich with green marketing, green logistics. This kinds of concept was upcoming because of the ecological environment. सिर्फ इन्हीं की वजह से एक नया concept business में आया, that is to safeguard the ecological part and safeguard the environment and the greenery in the particular country. So that comes into ecological environment. These are the certain very essential environment which is required to be understand. That is what, that you as in a business not harming your society, not harming your environment, not harming your resources. So that will lead to this. Now, if we try to sum up all these things, these are the very essential environment to understand about the country. When you need to understand the in-depth knowledge of that particular country, go and study about all these environments. You get the very good understanding about that particular country. That is why the legal environment, political environment are essential to understand. That means how much political parties are there, how they perform, what are the rules and regulation an organization is going to follow, what kind of tariff they were paying, what amount of tariff they were going to pay, what are the cultures they have, is the people or the population of that particular country is educated or not, or they were enriched with their culture or not, how we are going to serve them. This kind of things is always required to be studied. So in this, that is the factors required to signify the changes in how individual business unit operate from one country to the next country. That is how a business is going to be performed in the different area. So yes, this is what about this session, and thank you so much.